Enrique Peña Nieto was elected President of Mexico in 2012, establishing the Institutional Revolutionary Party, also known as PRI, as the dominant party in Mexico. As it has been mentioned, the PRI had controlled Mexico for 70 years, whose reputation was generally related with authoritarianism and corruption. Nevertheless, Peña Nieto tried to distance himself from his party reputation, promising to break with the past in favor of a more democratic and transparent government. On February 10, 2014, a decree published in Mexico's Federal Gazette amended, added, and repealed many provisions of 31 articles of the Mexican Constitution that affect political electoral matters. The reform, which was passed by the Federal Congress and by most state legislatures, includes, among others, the following measures. After several decades of prohibition, the 2014 constitutional reform allows for the re-election of all legislative and municipal offices. Senators can be elected for up to 2 consecutive periods and federal representatives for up to 4. In other words, both senators and federal representatives can hold office for a maximum period of 12 years. The only requirement is that they should be nominated by the same party, unless they renounce their party membership before serving half of their mandate. The reform also specifies that the federal entities should regulate the re-election of mayors, councilors, and administrators, who can be re-elected for 1 consecutive period as long as their mandate period does not exceed 3 years. Secondly, some measures that affect the presidency were established. The most important one is that the president may opt to establish a coalition government with one or more of the political parties represented in the Federal Congress. This reform not only affects the national level, but also local levels. Nevertheless, a political party cannot participate in more than one coalition, and the coalitions cannot change for different types of elections. With the 2014 reform, the gender affirmative action became a constitutional order, imposing on the political parties the obligation to guarantee gender parity. In other words, all candidate lists for federal and local legislative bodies, including those of priority elections, must be integrated by 50% women and 50% men. Furthermore, independent candidates are for the first time allowed to run the public office. Moreover, this reform creates the National Electoral Institute as a public institution, replacing the Federal Electoral Institute. The INE will be the electoral authority, independent in its decision and operations. Furthermore, the audit of the finances of political parties and of the campaigns of the candidates will be the responsibility of the General Council of the INE. Drops in oil production over the past 10 years and weak GDP growth are driving the need to open up the energy sector. Therefore, Mexico has launched an ambitious transformation process that should bring to an end the state monopolies in its energy sector. The government targeted the energy sector, among others, and set out a process of making it more competitive, lower cost, and environmentally sustainable. In 2013, the government amended Mexico's constitution to allow private investment in both the electric and petroleum sectors. Its goals were to lower electricity and fuel prices by increasing efficiency, improve the balance of payment, share the benefits with society, and increase the amount of clean energy, all in a transparent manner. Regarding hydrocarbons, the reforms focused on increasing the productivity of Pemex while attracting foreign investment to the industry. Nevertheless, Pemex has dominated the petroleum product market in Mexico, as all of the gas stations were its franchises, though it was vastly inefficient and imported about half the gasoline that Mexico consumed. With demand for petroleum products growing in Mexico, an influx of new providers was warranted, thus simulating competition in an area with an all-encompassing incumbent firm would be complicated. Therefore, private companies were now to participate in the exploration and extraction of hydrocarbons under 4 types of contracts chosen by the government: production sharing agreements, profit sharing agreements, and licenses, and the previous option of service contracts was still available. As a result, investor optimism about Mexico's hydrocarbon sector increased after the reform was signed into law. In the case of electricity, the reform provided the creation of a wholesale electricity market in Mexico, which would allow private companies to produce and sell electricity and compete with CFE and each other. In 2013, President Enrique Peña Nieto signed into law new rules for the telecommunications and broadcasting industries that are designed to curb the power of billionaire Carlos Slim's América Móvil and broadcaster Televisa. América Móvil controls 80% of Mexico's landline phone market and 70% of the wireless market, while Televisa captures close to 70% of Mexico's television audience. This reform would promote greater competition, more and better conditions, better coverage and service quality, as well as lower prices and cost, stated the president. The new reform not only finds unfair competition, but also allows foreign participation in television companies to increase from 49% to 100%. In radio, foreign stakes will be allowed to increase from 0% to 49%. Before the reform, the Mexican government collected in average just 10.6% of the country's annual economic output, less than almost any other country at its level of development. With solar tax revenue, the government has paid for itself instead of squeezing money from Pemex, the state-owned oil monopoly, to pay for 30 to 40% of its spending. Hence, in 2013, President Enrique Peña Nieto proposed a revision of his country's tax system, intended to collect billions of dollars to finance new social programs. His plan included the elimination of many loopholes and exemptions that favors the richest Mexicans, and the creation of new taxes on capital gains, carbon emissions, and soft drinks, and increased income taxes for those making over about $39,000 a year. Financial reform is one of the key points of Peña Nieto's economic agenda, which aim was to improve years of slow growth. The reform proposed imposing a 10% tax on stock market gains and dividends. Moreover, the shared border area with the United States will no longer enjoy a lower tax that was originally introduced to help trade. Furthermore, the government of President Enrique Peña Nieto introduced a new banking sector reform law in January 2014. The aim of the law was to strengthen the regulatory powers of the National Banking and Securities Commission and National Commission for the Protection and Defense of the Users of Financial Services. Moreover, we find other objectives, such as to promote greater competition and reduce costs within the banking system, to strengthen the development banks, and to improve the system of loan guarantees. This reform looked to achieve the government's objective of bringing more private sector funding into its infrastructure development program.